broadcasting or recording this podcast from the floor of the exhibit hall at Trees and Utilities. We're really pleased to have with us Hal Acree, and welcome, Hal.
Well, thank you, Phil. It's great to be here.
Well, good.
Yeah,
Hey,
excited
Hal,
to have you.
introduce yourself. Tell us about you and a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, how far back you want me to go? I got a ways. No, I'm just teasing. I spent biggest part of my professional career in commercial truck equipment. So I've been around equipment a lot, like we see around the hall here, pretty much all my career. It's just been on a completely different side of the commercial fence, if you will. So it's funny. I've built and sold thousands of trucks probably in my career to utility companies and had no idea that any of this even existed.
Wow.
So I spent a lot of time building all the different kinds of trucks, service bodies, dump bodies, cranes, buckets, that kind of thing, and did so for a couple of different companies. I've been with mainly national fleet focused commercial truck upfitters. A couple of years ago, had an opportunity to join Progress Rail on the utility vegetation management side. We built some trimmers and mowers, and like I said, it's kind of like an old dog in new tricks. I'm really enjoying it.
Well, good.
Yeah.
A little bit of a career change, but not completely.
Yeah.
Good.
Hal, when just for the audience and even for Isaac, like when you say you build, are you designing like you guys are in-house manufacturing? Like, explain to us the extent of your involvement in that process.
It's kind of unique too, because commercial trucks are built in more than one stage. So, for instance, an OEM, original equipment manufacturer, would build a chassis, like say a Ford would build a Super Duty cabin chassis without a bed on the back. And then we could take that chassis and we could mount a flatbed with a lift gate, we could mount a service body with a crane, we could mount a bucket truck with a service body, so we were what's called a final stage manufacturer, where we take an incomplete vehicle and turn it into what it was meant to be.
So kind of modularizing what's there. I've got some pieces. I'm going to turn it into something functional for those guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Exactly. I used to say we'd do anything for a buck as long as it was safe and legal, right? So we could do just about anything with a truck.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good. So how's unusual? I should say that.
Thank you. Thanks very
Great
much.
segue.
So every year, the UAA has the System Utility Veg Manager Summit. They've been doing it for many years, 15, 20 years. And they never allow anybody that's not employed by the utility in. And Hal is the rare, I shouldn't have said unusual, rare individual that doesn't work for a utility but was invited to the summit. And that's pretty impressive.
Well, thanks. I think I'm unusual and rare. Yeah.
I took back the unusual. Rare.
Fine wine.
I was there 10 years, and I can't remember ever inviting somebody from
Wow.
outside.
Well, that is special then.
I think it is.
Hal, where are you based?
I live in Lafayette, Indiana. I work out of an office in my home remotely, and my title at Progress Rail is National Sales Manager of Utility Vegetation Equipment, and I work on a team with two other guys, and we basically cover the country from different locations. Our plant is in Montgomery, Alabama.
Yep.
That's where we manufacture the trimmers and the mowers and such. Yeah.
What have you seen industry-wise in terms of filling orders? Like, are you super busy? Like, have you seen an uptick over the last, say, 3 or 4 years? Like, what kind of trends are you seeing in terms of the requests coming out of the utilities?
Yeah, I've only been in the industry for 2 years. But in that time, I think we've seen some movement toward, or what I'm learning as I'm going here, is that it's such a hard balance to strike. I mean, these utility veg managers, to try to weigh the care of the tree, the care of the forest, the care of the right-of-way, maintain reliability. I mean, these are all very difficult things. And then you throw in endangered species, different habitat, soil degradation, all of these issues. So trying to marry, and at the same time, control a budget, and get things done on time and in time, right? So all of those issues I think are the mechanical type right-of-way equipment is expanding just because it tends to be, I would say this about mechanical right-of-way management is the equipment is first and foremost safe and productive. So I think every manufacturer here would lead with our machine, regardless of what it does. It could be a tree trimmer like we build. It could be a tree feller. It could be is safe and productive. We try to keep the employees out of harm's way, right? So if we can be safe and productive, and then tick all of those boxes, it's more, I think, on the utilities radar these days. And we hear the buzzwords like, total integrated vegetation management plans and things like that. And when that means there's a little piece for just about everything to play a bigger role. And I think our world is getting bigger in that way.
It's definitely getting bigger.
Interesting.
So can you tell us something about the presentation at the summit? What they asked you to do, and then give us a rundown.
Well, it's starting to all make sense to me now. But they asked me to basically try to present the goods and bads of all the different types of vegetation management equipment that's used on right-of-way maintenance, right? So, and the caveat was, and we don't need a 35-minute sales pitch, So they wanted me to leave my sales hat at the house and come and basically try to present all the different types of equipment. And it was a great exercise for me because, again, I'm not a 30-year veteran in it, so it provided me the conduit to really kind of do a little research and get to know some stuff. So that was fun because I just put a presentation together that included some of the stuff that we built, but also a lot of the equipment that is used that we don't build, but it's still in the right of ways.
What even got you in this just broad space, not from just the utility vegetation management space, but equipment manufacturing? What got you down that path?
Well, again, coming from the truck world, I grew up in Detroit. My dad was an engineer with Ford. We settled in Louisville when I was in high school. And, the truth of the matter is I always wanted to be a baseball player than a baseball coach, like most young guys. And then you think, well, I wasn't good enough to do that, clearly. But what got me in it was I was a mechanic when I was about 17 years old. And in Louisville, where they built a lot of trucks, there were jobs there for guys. And, back then it was, $3 an hour. I mean, that was high cotton.
My God, yeah.
And so that got me into the equipment. And then I just kind of, it's funny. One day you look up and 40 years is gone and you've been, doing the same thing over and over. But I really enjoyed it.
Innovation's coming out. What are we looking for in the next few years?
Well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
Okay. Well, tell us the other
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
Well, some of the innovations coming out, a lot of it has to do with, at least in the circles that I'm playing in. I don't pretend to speak for the entire industry or anybody that builds mechanics, but it's the same in everything. In my world, 75 foot's not high enough. The specs read ground to sky. So how tall can we get a saw from the ground up to trim? And then now there's aerial trimmers that come from the sky down, right? And they're, exactly, right across the way here. Yep. So there are answers to those, but trying to basically discover the most cost-effective, safest way that doesn't compact soil is bad, that doesn't put the tree in any danger or adversely affect. So things like, in other words, so the innovation are how do we get higher from the ground?
Yeah.
That way you keep climbers out of trees, and I mean, things that are dangerous to do. I mean, we're in a very dangerous industry, and manage that safely, and also, like how to make a proper cut on a tree limb. I said cut. One of the things I learned at that UVM meeting is there's a difference between pruning and trimming and cutting,
Yes.
and again, this is fantastic stuff to learn.
Well,
So trying to get mechanized pruning, I think, would be a huge innovation if we can figure out how to do that.
Mechanized pruning. Interesting.
So, that kind of stuff, I guess, would be. And we're working on product development where if you can get equipment that is transportable, where it's not so big that you've got to get permitted trailers and things like that to move it around, that still can reach high, that can fit in people's backyards. Those are all the things that tick all the boxes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, in the industry everywhere, you can't get workers. So do you see a shift towards mechanized approaches that rely more on equipment than people?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just talking to somebody just down from our booth today, who was describing the equipment that they use to do some trimming on right-of-ways, and it's typically transmission lines because they were looking at some pretty big, expensive equipment. But one of the biggest motivators were, if you use climbers with chippers and bucket and all of that, you've got 12 people that are running on this one crew on two different sides of a road at one time. They're doing it with 3 people, I think that we've heard that from a number of our customers on some of the trimmers that we got. It's not a question of we would argue that it's safe and productive, but they can find a guy that would sit in an air-conditioned cab and trim a tree. It's hard to find one that's going to stand in a bucket at 95-degree heat, and run a chainsaw. I mean, it's hard to find those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously we're in an inflationary environment. Everything is expensive, and I'm sure the inputs to make the things that you guys need to make have gone up in cost, and you're going to have to reflect that in your price. Talk a little bit about the economic side of, equipment manufacturing and, how that's impacted decisions that you guys have had to make over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, supply chain,
Yep.
right? I mean, that's what we've all heard, and sick of hearing.
Yep.
But, I would say that where we're at today versus where we were even just 6 months ago is a lot better place. 2022, we saw, just in-house, we saw, and it rolled down. 2022 was a tough year from a price standpoint, but still a record year on sales in many ways. The need for the equipment was there, and I think it was maybe even accelerated by basically the lead times that were being quoted by folks. So people were over ordering a little bit just to hopefully get what they could get.
Yep.
So what we saw last year, were market surcharges based on steel prices because you couldn't ship a machine in 30 days and the price was fluctuating every 30 days. That has planed out. I think if you look at, again, I can only speak for us, but if you look at our pricing right now, and we've been able to basically, that's pulled back. So our price today is lower than it was this same time last year.
So Hal, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the competitive landscape in terms of other folks that are manufacturing equipment as well. Obviously, you don't need to name them. Why give them the edge? No, I was just kind of curious that from a point of differentiation, what is kind of the point of differentiation for you guys? Is it managing that supply chain a little bit better or innovating a little faster? How are you separating from the other guys out there building for the utilities?
Well, that's a good question. The value system of each customer that we have is a little bit different, So, for some accounts, price is important. For others, it's perhaps service. I think a couple of things that we find that helps differentiate us is we try to maintain a reasonable lead time. So we run a production schedule that we try to stay ahead of the curve. So we're not necessarily building a backlog and then executing. So we call it, build to stock as opposed to build to order, and then we sell from stock.
Oh, right. So like you're essentially making sure that somebody's bought it before you've produced it, right?
Well, yeah, we're not doing that. What we're saying is our product line is so fixed and mature that
you can have inventory.
Right. In other words, there's not a lot of option content, and we're able to keep things as modular enough on our equipment where if you wanted to add a front winch to a machine or another bell or whistle, we can do that pretty easily on a stock unit.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
is there a lot of? Do you find that the industry, there's a lot of curation in the equipment, or is it pretty standardized, and the things that you're adding are like buying a car and you're adding air conditioning, you know what I mean?
Yeah. In the stuff that we've got, there's really not. I mean, in a trimmer, it's all about trimming and doing it in a way that you're not in a way that you can navigate whatever terrain you're on without rolling over. More about, again, safe and productive. And then the creature comforts are like air conditioning, which is a standard these days on all the equipment. And not just ours. I mean, through the whole thing, I'd be shocked. But the stuff would be like for instance, our machines are like 24 volts, so it's not real easy to stick a AM FM CD changer stereo in there, and most of the time the managers don't want their guys in there listening. That they need to be paying attention to what they're doing, right? Again, safe and productive. So we're the option content that we have typically allows for either a better or safer operation. Strobe lighting, if you're going to be on road, for instance, would be.
Is there a secondary market for your equipment? And do you guys also then create revenue from maintenance contracts as well? Do you buy the equipment back? Do you repurpose it, refurbish it?
Right. Well, thank you for. Actually, that's a big part of what we do. Is we have a remanufacturing program where where we take a machine that could be as old as 15. We've done one 18 years now.
Wow.
That if you look at our trimmer, it's an articulating rubber tire trimmer. So it's a very heavy, thick steel. Yeah. We just kind of build it that way. Yeah. And it's what we're able to do is completely disassemble it, strip it, blast the frame, make whatever repairs, and then we go back with a all new or remanufactured component. So we do a complete rebuild of a SkyTrim machine. Yeah. And in fact, we market that in last year. That was one of the things that helped us, because a lot of the cost fluctuation and increases in 2022 were steel related. Yep. And if you look at our rebuild program, the stuff that we reused was all the stuff that was made out of steel. Wow, so that's awesome. We were actually able to hold that price firm for the year.
Oh, very good. So. Well, Hal, I really appreciate you making time today. This is fascinating. Very different perspective.
It really is. It shows you how big an industry this is. Yeah. And, sometimes we think it's just in the tree, but it takes a whole massive industry to support it.
Yeah, it does.
This is cool.
I'm enjoying it. I appreciate you guys having me.
No, it was great.
Experience.
You were fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
That's it for this episode of Trees and Lines, brought to you by Iapetus Holdings. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. If you have any questions or comments on any of our episodes or ideas for topics or guests, we'd love to hear from you. Please contact us at treesandlines@iapetusllc.com. We'll chat with you soon.